So I want to thank everyone for coming here tonight. I noticed that most of the faces are faces I don't know, which is good. This was all designed to give people information that are undecided, don't know how they're voting on this, or want more information on it. So that's why we're doing this, and the clerk and I are going to answer your questions. Maybe Sean will jump in with an answer or two. I don't know where he went to, but he's over there. But he might jump in with an answer or two as well. But we'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance, so please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Grab a seat. So what I'll do is I'll start with the referendum, just to give you an idea of what you're voting on for the referendum. So what yes, what no, okay, what they mean. So a yes vote retains our current form of government. Our current form of government, so I'll just highlight the parts that are going to be different. So our current form of government, the village manager hires everyone, including all department heads, all officers, and the attorney and the treasurer, and does so with basically, once they're hired, they have no approval requirement from the board. They do this not in a public meeting, they just go and hire someone. So that's what they do. Additionally, they're responsible for enforcing all of our laws and ordinances. And then lastly, when the village manager gets hired under the current form of government, it is hired by the board. So it's a vote of 7 and the board hires them. The board can hire them for any length contract of any length, so including exceeding the mayor's term. A vote no goes back to the form of government we used to be. Goes back to a village trustee form of government is what it goes back to. So that's what we were prior to this. What changes is the mayor has appointment power of all the department heads, all the assistant directors, the attorney, and the treasurer, with approval from the board in a public meeting. So it requires what they call advice and consent of the board, which means they have to vote on it, which is approval from the board. And so that, by its very nature, has to be done in a public meeting. Additionally, the mayor will appoint the village manager. The village manager cannot be appointed for longer than the mayor's term. Again, the board has to approve that village manager. So under no circumstances would I be able to appoint someone into the next mayor's term. And then lastly, enforcing the laws then shifts back to the mayor. If you look statewide, there's about 1,400 communities. There's 72 that have the form we have now. There's over 1,300 that have a different form where the mayor has those powers. There's differences in how that's structured. In our form, it would be a village trustee form. And Clerk O'Sullivan, Pat's here tonight to talk about this as well. And one of the reasons that he came up here tonight is because he's been involved for almost 2 years now. And he's seen how the board operates, and he's also seen this form of government, and he also has a perspective from District 230. Also, as you recall, he ran in the slate that was against the slate that I ran with. So it gives you a different perspective on this referendum.
All right, thanks. Again, Pat O'Sullivan, village clerk, and as part of the village board, the clerk is actually a little bit unique in that the village board is made up of 6 trustees and a mayor and a clerk. The clerk is responsible for the documents of the village, as well as setting the agendas and announcing the topics at the meetings. Essentially is what the village clerk does. The village clerk does not vote, okay? So I currently also serve on the District 230 school board, which is Sandburg, Stagg, and Andrew High Schools. So I've been on there for a number of years, and when I got my first village board packet, I said, Keith, where's the personnel report? He said, what are you talking about? I said, well, at District 230, we get a personnel report. So every month we know who's being hired, who is going on leave, we know who is being promoted, who's set to retire. So that's all laid out for us. And we as a board member, and I was a board member of District 230, I do vote, we look at that and we vote yes or no. It's not necessarily a rubber stamp. We're not here to micromanage the school district, but we want to know. So we like to keep the administration on their toes. I'll give you an example. is, every so often we'll see a familiar name on the new hire list. I'm like, wait a minute, is this the gym teacher at Andrew's son or daughter? Or is this person someone that was somewhere else that we knew about? So it kind of keeps the administration on their toes, so we don't have any nepotism or people getting jobs that aren't qualified to do so. So we don't dive deep into every little hire and figure out if, that's the job of administration. Administration does a good job, we get good people, and I like to think the districts run very well, so we're happy with that. But we do take a look at everybody that comes through our door. And I was really surprised when the village didn't get that. I was like, where's the personnel reports? Oh, we don't do that. What do you mean you don't do that, right? So one of the concerns is, when you have a village manager that's responsible for the hiring, let me back up 1 second. I talked to 2 mayors at one point in time when I first ran in 2007 for the school board. And one mayor said, if you hire really good people and they do a good job, it's going to make you look good as mayor, okay? The other guy said, if you hire your buddies, they're going to take care of you, okay? I didn't really like that approach. I took the more if you hire good people, they'll do a good job, make you look good approach, and that's what we'd like to do. But if I don't have any authority to at least look at who we're hiring, I can't promise you they're the best people for the job. And that's kind of surprising. The second thing that really surprised me is, I'll tell you a little story about what happened on the district board about 10 years ago. We were in closed session. We had an issue with an employment practices potential lawsuit. One of our employees was alleging improper workplace or something along those lines. And our attorney says, okay, we suggest that you settle for $85,000. We'll make an offer for $85,000. When I'm sitting there, I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, what are they alleging? Well, they're alleging not workplace violence, but hostile work environment. I said, okay, I go, don't we have insurance for this? And then the attorney says, oh yeah, well, we didn't turn it in within 24 hours and we didn't do this, we don't want to get involved in insurance. And I said, well, my real job isn't clerk and it isn't school board. My real job, I'm an insurance agent and I sell employment practices liability insurance. This is right in my wheelhouse. Like, no, I've never heard of not reporting a claim in 24 hours denying coverage. I say, let's send it to the insurance company, have them handle it. I say the district $85,000, and back 10 years ago, that was 2 teachers, okay? So what happened to my confidence in our attorneys? It went to the toilet. Well, they're my attorneys, okay? So as an elected official, I don't have any sort of immunity in terms of my personal assets are at risk. So we went out and did an RFP for our attorneys because our board wanted to decide who protected ourselves in the case of something happening to us. I think we should have that authority. I think we should have that ability to do. So when I found out that the village manager hires the attorneys, I was like, whoa, I don't have any say in who defends me and my personal assets are at risk. Those are 2 things with the employees and the attorneys that we enjoy at the school district that the village doesn't have. And as an elected official, I would like, personally, I'd feel better if I hired my own attorney and knew who the heck the village was hiring. So the counter argument to that is, well, if the village manager is doing all these things, then just get rid of the village manager. And that's a good point. But I can tell you this, I have clients around the country. I'm on a bank board of directors where we talk about community, issues going on. And I just came from negotiations for the school district with our attorney. And everyone to a person says, everybody in the country is having a hard time attracting and maintaining good employees. So to say that, yeah, if you don't like what the village manager has done, just get rid of him or her, I don't buy that because they're not out there, okay? We have a demographic issue with aging and whatnot and who's coming through the pipeline. It's just not that easy if the village manager isn't doing a good job to do that. So to that point as well, I think a village manager should be a professional village manager. I think they should have an education in public policy, preferably a master's degree. So to have those qualifications, there are not a lot of candidates out there at this point in time. So I understand that argument. If they don't like what you're doing, you get rid of them. But let the village manager do what they're Keith and I were talking earlier. Let them do what they were educated to do. I mean, our village manager is really good at some things that I have no idea as a layperson or as an elected official. Things about ordinances and all this kind of administration thing. He's really good at it. Okay. So we need somebody that's good. And the Village of Orland Park, we need a professional manager. There's no question about it. So again, if they're not doing what we want them to do, yeah, we can get rid of them, but good luck finding another one. So that's kind of the perspective I bring. So some of the things that I enjoy as a school board member that as a village board member I don't have, and I just want to kind of point out the differences between the two, and you can make a decision one way or the other.
And that brings up your point about a village manager. So one thing the board is all in agreement is that we need a village manager. We're big enough, we should have that. There are literally 1,000 village managers working in Illinois that don't work in this form of government. So we have no intention of removing our village manager. He's going to stay. We've already passed on our committee of the whole that we're going to create a village manager position. And that, I think, was the mistake back in 1983 when this was done, is that they felt like they were getting bigger and needed a village manager, and they felt the only way to do this was via an Illinois statute. But it's not. You can just hire a village manager and set the parameters, which always leaves you the opportunity as a board to set those parameters for your village manager, what you want to delegate to them. And you can do that. And you have to do it in public by ordinance, and so that's precisely what we plan to do. So, in my personal position, because when we're at the village board meetings, all we can do is say this is what's going on. We can't take a position. We can take a position here. My personal position is I'll be voting no, and I put this on the agenda because I lived it. Okay, I lived the downside of this particular form of government, because when I was elected, before I was sworn in, the board and the previous mayor hired the former deputy Democratic committeeman who worked for Dan McLaughlin as the village manager. And then once I was in office, they extended his contract, and they extended his contract past my term. Okay? I will tell you, as a mayor, and every mayor that I know will tell you, the mayor and village manager have to work like this. Well, that's an impossibility when they actually put someone in to block your agenda. I was locked out of buildings. I can tell you that as a snow contractor, I was able to get into public works as a contractor. I tried to get into public works during a major snowstorm. It was, I think we had 14 inches or something like that, and we were working multiple shifts. Went in there just to talk to the guys, say thank you, see how things were going. I could not get in the building. I'm like, I could get in the building as a contractor, and I can't, my key pass was blocked in every door. And by the way, by law, the mayor has access to all buildings, all records, all the time, by law. So that should not happen. So I was locked out of all those, okay? My emails were also blocked from sending to group emails. I had to type everyone in individually. That's just unacceptable. So I lived having someone try and block you constantly. And I don't think that's what the people vote for. I think the people voted for a change, and so they want that to be put in place. And frankly, I don't think that, going forward, I don't think that another board should be able to do that to another mayor. I think that the mayor should never appoint someone, or the board should never hire someone for longer than the mayor's term, right? Because you want the mayor, and like I said, the mayor and the manager have to work like this. So I experienced that, okay? And so when you look at that, you say that's the worst part of this, and that's a big downside to me. And I don't think that's what people want. One trustee actually told me, said, you're just here to cut ribbons. And by law, unless there's an emergency, and I declare one, that's just about right by law. There's not a lot of power. The power that the mayor's office holds is more because you think I have, the people want me to be in charge. They wanted Dan McLaughlin for for 20 years to be in charge. That's where that comes from, right? So there's not, and the other legal power we have, again, is we can always put something on the agenda, and they can't take that away. We're always the liquor commissioner. Either form of government's going to have that. And then otherwise, we have access to all records on demand and buildings. So that's basically my rationale for putting it on the ballot. It's not going to impact me a whole lot because we have a board that's aligned. We have a good village manager. It's not going to change how, and he does run all of his hires through us. We work with them. Now the difference is, right now he can make those hires even if he runs them through us and with us. He can do it on his own and not in a public meeting. I still think they should be public, right? I still think those appointments to those positions should be public. So anyways, that's my position on it. So with that, I'll open it up to, we're just here to answer questions. So raise your hand.
Good evening, Mayor Pekau and Mr. O'Sullivan. I live in Orland, and I teach social studies in another side district outside of Orland. And I do appreciate everything you've done to try to reduce crime, and I do appreciate your service as a veteran as well. My grandfather's a World War II veteran. Why wasn't this referendum something that came up earlier, and I'm also interested to know how long, because I'm someone who's very concerned with a balance of power and checks on power. How long did Mayor McLaughlin eliminate your power as mayor and give it to the village clerk?
So they hired a village manager, and they hired him, quote, on an interim basis, but then they kind of had a dog and pony show and hired him full time. And then they extended his contract, and that was the board, not McLaughlin, that did that, but he was on that hired him initially. And that went, I think his final contract was about 6 months or a year past my term. And why the referendum didn't come up sooner is, I mean, we can put referendums up at any time, and I think one, we were dealing with COVID, frankly. We're also dealing with a village manager, and we're trying to, and one of the things you have to look at when you do this, it does cause disruption, right? Because there's a lot of uncertainty. Well, what does this really mean? And you're seeing it now, right? You're seeing what that uncertainty is. And, I always thought, I thought that this should be put in place for the future, so that, because I think, personally, I think it's the worst form of government that there is, because you don't elect a village manager, someone who normally has never lived here, and won't live here once they leave their job. They have no ties to the community. So I think it's a bad form of government. I think as a voter, I want my elected officials to be accountable to me, right? That's what I want, okay? So, we were just dealing with the other issues, term limits, just trying to, we transitioned 3 new trustees. The first 2 years, it was very difficult for me to get anything done. Then I got 3 trustees and we were able to get a lot of stuff done, but it was very divisive. And so now we get a full board, so it seemed like this was the appropriate time to do it. Someone actually pointed out to me that they're going to beat the heck out of you if you do this. I'm like, listen, I've gotten beaten up plenty, and at the end of the day, I'm going to do what I think is right for the village, and I think this is right for the village.
Kind of a 2-part question. You said that the.
I think that control behind Pat can turn the volume up.
How's that? Kind of 2-part question. One of them.
There you go.
One of them has to do.
Is that too much?
Yeah.
Sorry, Bridget.
All right, we got it?
Okay. All right. Start over. You.
There we go.
Mayor, you said that the village manager appoints the positions. Does that include the police chief?
That includes the police chief, yes.
It does, okay. And then as far as the village manager position, being a business person myself, I know that there's nobody out there. I mean, the talent is hard to find in any business. I've experienced that. So our current village manager, I believe, was entertaining a position in another municipality. Is there a limit? In private business, I guess we, have to go where the market allows us to go as far as salaries, benefits, that kind of thing. Do other municipalities, other villages have unlimited budgets? Is the grass always greener? How do we keep an excellent village manager if it's a seller's market and everybody's competing for that talent?
Yeah, it's a challenge. I mean, but Orland Park's a great community, and it's interesting because the opponents to our position, so those that say voting yes, all we saw were ads blasting us because our village manager took another. We got rid of him already. I orchestrated him being gone. Blah blah blah. I've known that he told me before I saw it in the news, but I didn't know that he was interviewing, in Janesville. But who can blame someone for moving to Wisconsin and getting out of Illinois? I can't blame anyone for doing that, right? I'm not going to hold that against him. He didn't get the position. He's still here. And, as I always tell our employees, because one of the things I learned when I got here, there were a couple things I learned. So if you think about professional management, right? We all, we talk about that professional management. We hear that again all the time recently. 2010 to 2017 when I got here. So I asked for all the reviews for all the department heads back to 2010. Another thing I was blocked from getting until I had to go to the attorneys, and they pointed out that I'm entitled to all records. And the idea of looking at those records was I kind of wanted to know who was working for us and what their strengths and weaknesses are. But I was also looking at how our employee review process worked and all that. Now, we have 7 or 8 department heads. There was 1 review in 7 years across 8 people. That does not smack of professionalism to me. And so I knew we had a problem and we needed to change how we manage our people. And the other thing we had is we had people who'd been here an incredibly long time. This happens a lot in municipalities, a lot in government, where they just stay in their jobs for 20, 30 years. And that's great often because you get a lot of, a lot of corporate knowledge. It can also be a detriment because you don't have fresh ideas and those types of things. And we never really spent time training people to get to the next level of management. And that's a failing of professional managers we've had in the past. And that's something that George and I have worked really hard together to make happen, along with our board, to make happen. And one of the messages I've sent is, when we train someone, and even George, this was his first village manager position, and I can tell you it was a unanimous vote, including a split board. It was a unanimous vote because he was clearly the best, okay? But he had no experience, so we knew there's going to be some gaps because he has no experience, right? Now he's got the experience, right? At the end of the day, if we teach someone, they get better at their job, and they can find something that's a better fit for them because either they have an opportunity they can't get here because they're blocked, or because they can go get more money than we're willing to pay or afford to pay, then we've done our job because we've made them better at their job and more marketable. And hopefully we're doing that to everyone so someone can step in and fill their shoes. So that's kind of our philosophy, is never inhibit someone from going to find a better opportunity, because we still are the Village of Orland Park. We have a responsibility to all of you, and we want to pay fairly and competitively, but we also don't want to overpay. Because in this market right now, there are towns that are out there way overpaying what their budget can afford to pay for people to come work for them. And that's very short-sighted because they've got those salary structures forever once they do that. So we're trying to be mindful of that and just create an environment where people stay here and work because Orland Park's a great place to be, and I think we've done that.
Thanks, Sean. Hi, thank you, Chris Kasmer. I mean, this question should come as no surprise, but, all the empirical peer-reviewed research shows that, communities with our current form of government have lower tax rates, better bond ratings, lower debt levels, they're better at dealing with fiscal matters under environmental stress, and they have less than half as many corruption convictions. I mean, what kind of research or, empirical reports can you point to that would say that, the mayor-council form is better? And, what kind of guardrails can we be confident we'll have if, this new form comes back in, even after you? Because, maybe the person after you won't have the high level of an integrity that people expect.
Well, so there's some problems with your stats, actually, because you just said when we go to a mayor-council form of government, we are not going to a mayor-council form of government. We're going to a village trustee form of government, and we're going to hire a village manager. So in those studies you have, those are studies that have a council like we're going to have and have a manager. It's not one, that is not a study of just statutory council manager forms of government. That's a study of forms of government that have a manager and a council. Well, we have just around us, we have Mokina, Tinley Park, Frankfurt, New Lenox, Homer Glen, Lamont. Those are all council forms of government with a manager that would fall into that category. So we're going to fall into that category. So you're comparing us to a mayor-council form of government, which is a completely separate form of government that would require a second referendum in the future to change to that form of government. Very different. I will still vote the same way that I do, so I vote on everything. I don't have any veto power. The things that change is exactly what I told you, and that's it.
Good evening, Mr. Pekau, Mr. O'Sullivan. I went to the last meeting that took place here as well, earlier this month, and I wanted to be at this one too, because I'm trying to keep an open mind. But I can't help thinking that this referendum, to me, seems like a solution in search of a problem. I don't see why we need it. Orland Park has prospered for the last 40 years under the current form of government. I don't really see who would benefit from it except for you. And I really didn't hear any conversation about it before it went on the ballot. Which brings me to my question. Before this was put on the ballot, were there any steps taken to gather public input?
As anything that we put on the ballot, we have a board meeting. We had a board meeting, it was publicized, the agenda was publicized, and as far as information about why it was put on the ballot, I think every single trustee had a comment in that board meeting. They're videotaped, they're broadcast live, so you could certainly see that video if you want to see why we put it on the ballot. I just told you why we put it on the ballot. You think it's something that's in search of a problem. Well, so I will tell you that the real, and I think I'll turn this over to Trustee Compass in a minute because I think he has a perspective on this as well, but the real issue here with this form of government, if you have control of the board as a mayor, if your board is aligned with you, okay, the forms of government don't function all that much differently, okay, except that there's never transparency in the hiring process. But we've directed our village manager that you're going to go through us to hire anybody, even though, and he could go to court and fight us, and he'd win, he'd lose his job if that happens. And people are like, well, of course, Clerk O'Sullivan said, hey, you could fire someone. Yeah, we can, but they are allowed by law to do this. So anyone we fire for doing something they're allowed by law, it becomes that we fired someone who followed the law. So now we have big payouts that we have to do. So it's not as easy as you think just to fire someone because they disagree. As far as the 40-year thing, it's about the transition of the form of government. The first transition we had under this 40-year period was a death of a mayor. And there were about 4 factions, so no one had control of the board. And then you had a mayor that was elected. That mayor was there for 24 years. Then we had another transition. That was mine. And I've already outlined exactly what happened to me. That board tried to make my position irrelevant and me irrelevant, which is not what the people want. I don't think I should have that power going forward. By the way, vote yes would give me that power to do that. Voting no would get rid of that power. So the fact that it's giving me more power, voting no, it really doesn't. I mean, yes, I appoint our directors, but I'm involved in the hiring process now. So I have a great working relationship with our manager, and if you have a good manager and you have a good board, you're not going to have issues. But if you have what we had, where you have a divided board, I can guarantee you're going to have these problems in the future. And we didn't have them because we didn't have a transition really until 36 years or 34 years into this is when we really had the first transition. So that's why we didn't have an issue. And I saw it in the transition. I don't want to see it in future transitions. And I've term limited myself. Okay? And I've seen the responses out there that, oh, it's not really term limited. It wasn't really a referendum. It was a referendum. It's by law. We're all term limited. So you're going to have more transitions. I actually think it's a good thing, but we don't want those transitions without allowing the new mayor to have input on the village manager. And the most important thing of all of that is the mayor has to be able to appoint the village manager and get approval from the board. It should be something you agree upon. If we would have had that when I first was elected, we wouldn't have had half the issues we had because you would have had to find someone you both could work with. And I think that's a good thing. I think saddling a mayor with someone that you cannot work with, who is trying to obstruct everything you're doing, that's a recipe for disaster for Orland Park. And the only way that happens is in this current form of government. And I know Trustee Compass has a point of view on this, as far as the transition.
I mean, not a planned one, but prior to running for office and becoming a trustee, I had the distinction and also the hard work of serving on the ad hoc ethics committee. And I can tell you that over those 10 months, we spent a lot of time looking at the secret investigation that was conducted by the previous village manager, how that was paid for, what they did, the lack of due process, the lack of actual true investigation. And it was a case study in what not to do in ethics. And I think it called out, to me, a rather sore spot that we have in our current form of government, that someone that isn't elected by the people, that the people don't understand is in charge of the village, could get away with that. And so, to me, I think we need to make sure that the people understand that when they're voting for someone, that they are accountable for the results of the village. And I think most voters in Orland Park, the ones I've talked to, didn't understand that the village manager had the statutory authority and not the mayor and the board. And so that's why we're looking at this change.
And if Clerk O'Sullivan has anything he wants to add on this.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I can't tell you how surprised I was the first meeting when I got the packet and there was no personnel, right? And I thought, as elected officials, we have all the responsibility, but none of the authority. And that's the worst place to be, okay? So just kind of want to point that out. And that's the biggest piece for me, and who picks our attorneys? I mean, I don't like somebody else picking my attorneys. I mean, it could be the village manager's brother-in-law working out of a broom closet. I don't have any choice over that. So part of this is, I think, for future elected officials, people who want to become elected officials in the future, that they'll have the peace of mind knowing that they can choose their own attorney, that they at least can review the personnel hires and what have you. So I think it's actually a benefit for people who want to run on the board in the future.
And this is a bit of a hypothetical, not completely. And Sean, we're going to have another question back there, so you might want to work your way back there. But Sean mentioned the investigation that was done. So the village manager did the investigation on his own. He did go to our police chief, and our police chief said, I'm not touching this at all, I don't want anything to do. And of course, we had Chief McCarthy, who's extremely high integrity, and was not going to do that, okay? And our village manager didn't hire him, okay? And there was no way he would ever try to fire him either, right? So our village manager was not going to do anything with that police chief. But he started this investigation, and then our attorneys wouldn't touch it, so he went and hired his own to go do this, okay? So he went and hired his own attorney to do this without approval from the board. But think about if he also got to hire his own police chief. He could essentially any village manager could go after any elected official they want to without approval from the board. It might eventually get them fired, but you can see how that can cause an awful lot of issues in the village. And personally, I think it's wrong. It's not going to happen for me. I've got one more term. I mean, it's 3 terms, and yes, technically it's 4 because the way the law works, you can't go backwards. But I believe in term limits and that it'll be 3. But I'm still term limited. I don't have that much time left. If I'm fortunate enough to win the next election, I will have for sure control of the board till at least my last 2 years, and we'll already have a village manager under either format. So it's not going to change anything for me. It's going to change for whoever succeeds me is what it really changes for, because it's the transition that matters. So let's just say, for example, that either I lose, or let's just say I win, and then I go to my 12 years and I stop, and I stop. Two people run, one who's aligned with me, one who's not. The one who's not wins, but some of the trustees that are aligned with the other person wins, and they still have control of the board. They could do the same thing to that mayor that was done to me. I don't think that's right. I think that mayor, they need to work. First off, they need to work together. And having been in a 6-to-1, it's brutal when you can't work together. So they need to work together. And so this ensures that, because it's always mayor's appointment with trustee approval. And we're still going to have a village manager, just like all these towns around us. So we're still going to have that.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Elizabeth Riegler. I recently moved to Orland, so I'm trying to collect information to make right decisions. I'm a nurse. I'm not a business owner. I'm not a politician, not running for school board. So what I hear is that if we vote no, the people who make decisions are going to work more collaboratively and have equal decision-making. The mayor, the board members, the trustees, and the village manager. They will all work together rather than the village manager appointing people and making decisions. Am I understanding that correctly?
So I think it's the idea that we're going to work more collaboratively. Here's what's actually going to happen. Okay, I think if you have a good board and good village manager, they're going to work collaboratively regardless. But I think what happens is the manager can hire department heads with no requirement to talk to any of the board. And I can tell you, Pat can tell you, Sean can tell you, that happens. Okay, there's no communication and someone's hired. We've made it very clear that's not happening anymore. So by law, they can hire everyone. Okay, they can hire the attorney. They do not have to come to the board. If they decide to fight with the board, they will actually win in court because the law gives them that power. Okay, now they may not keep their job, but we talked about that. There'll be a big payout, all of those kinds of severances and all that. Okay, what we're really talking about here is if you vote no, it becomes more transparent to you, the voter, because anyone that I appoint to a department head or an assistant director position must be approved on the board floor and voted for by the board. So the board has to approve it, so you know they've seen the hire. And trust me, we have seen hires that we didn't know about, both village managers, okay? So we will always, because I can't appoint someone without approval from the board, it has to be done in a public meeting. So by its very nature, it must be more transparent under a no vote than it is under the yes vote.
A point about transparency, and I hate always comparing to the schools, but that's kind of what they want to go to. I got a text last night saying, hey, we have a school board meeting tomorrow, so the agenda and the board packet has to be posted 48, 72 hours beforehand. So it's public out there right now. I got a text, hey, who are you guys going to hire for the building manager at this building? And you don't have to tell me, just give me the initial. I just took a screenshot of all the people that we're going to vote on to hire and send it to them. There's no secret. Like, just give me an initial, let me know who it is. No, it's here it is. Take a look at everybody. That's how it's supposed to be, I think.
Hi, I just want to say that I'm a little uncomfortable with you talking about the previous issues you had with the other village manager. He's not here to defend himself or put his side of the story forth. So that makes me a little uncomfortable because I don't know any of the details about that. So I don't think it's fair to him. The other thing is, though, when you work with these village managers, like you said, you didn't get the personnel packets. Can't you say to them, we would like you to incorporate personnel packets, we want to see what's happening? Do you have the latitude to do that?
We can say anything we want and ask them to do it. I can tell you that a village manager could refuse to give that information, and they would be totally within the law to do it because we have no authority to do it. Our village manager, if we requested that information, would give, a good village manager would give us that information, but there have been cases where village managers have sued boards in our form of government, and they win, because the law gives them that authority. Regarding your first part of your question, all the stuff that I just said is public. It's not a secret. It is now in a court case that has been deposed, and everything I said, and happy to provide you all the documentation of all of that stuff that was done. So none of that stuff is secret.
And one last thing about the personnel is if it did come to the board, it would be for information only or for discussion only. There's no voting on it.
Yeah, we have no say-so on that, and that's just the way, and that's just the way that it is. That's the way the law is currently written, and that's the difference. Under the current form of government, it's a statutory council manager form of government, which means the powers are given by state statute, which the state could change as well and give them more power. Okay, so the state statute gives them that power that I outlined, and I don't know, were you here at the very beginning? At the very beginning when I talked about the two different, because some of you have come in since that time. So the state statute gives the manager that power and takes it away from the mayor. In the state statute, the mayors have that power throughout the state. Unless this form of government is adopted, then that power is taken and given to the manager. So, and we're going back to what we used to be, back to what 1,300 other towns have as far as that authority.
Thank you all. Thank you both for your explanations as well as you so far. How many people have been fired by the village manager so far?
Well, technically, the village manager fires anyone that has been fired. So, because we don't, it's the village manager that does that. I guess the point is, but when it comes to personnel matters and who's fired and who's not, we can't really talk about any of that kind of stuff. But the village manager has complete authority on hiring and firing. The board doesn't do it. The only person that the board hires and fires is the village manager.
And as a follow-up, as someone who has seen Orland change since I was a child growing up in Lamont, I would like to know how can you and your board make our village more safe? I've seen a Brinks truck held up when I was less than 2 miles away with my daughter. I know that's not anyone's fault. I've seen the mall since I was 13 years old go completely differently than anyone would like it to go. I've seen an armed robbery, and I know there are foreign elements in the city and the suburbs constantly. I know that our schools, as a teacher, are constantly at risk. I would like to know how Orland Park plans to change crime, because I know you've reduced crime, but I've seen a hiccup in our crime rate recently, and it does concern me, Mayor.
So, well, thanks for your comments. Well, one thing, we're a big town, okay? So we've had the lowest violent crime rate for towns our size in the state of Illinois for the last 3 years, and we've been 1 or 2 for a long, long time. And I will tell you that at the low rate that we are, so it was 18 violent crimes. That's still 1.5 a month. So we still have crime. So I guess that's one of the points that I would make, is that even though we've reduced crime, we still have crime, okay? And so sometimes, and even, we had that lowest violent crime rate, we had a shooting at the mall during that, and we still had the lowest violent crime rate, but we had an incident. The Brinks truck is an incident. It's also something that's been, I think they've hit 8 or 9 other places, and it's being investigated by the FBI. So this is a crew that's working. The same thing with the attempted car theft. They were caught. So not only did they hit multiple other ones that night, our guys caught them by the end of the day. So that's how we keep crime down, is because criminals know when they come here, they're going to get caught. Regarding the mall crime is down significantly since I've been here. And I will tell you that even when I got here, mall crime, and we have a company called Crimecast, and they track mall crime all over the country, okay? And 100 is average across the country. And they do it from 1 to 3 miles, they do it up to 3 miles, and then up to 6 miles, okay? And I can tell you that last I looked, we were at like 56, so we're half of what the average mall is in the country. For 1 to 3 miles. 1 to 6, it's like 70%, which when you think of 1 to 6, now we get into Oak Forest, and we get into some areas that, aren't in Orland Park when we get 1 to 6. But our mall is safer by those stats than Oak Brook, Woodfield, any other mall in the Chicagoland area. And our crime has actually been going down. Our retail thefts have been going down ever since we put in. We worked with the mall to put in the youth supervision program. Since that time, it's been almost 2 years now. It's been over 2 years now. There's only been 1 theft on a Friday or Saturday, and that was not by a youth. It was actually by an adult. So that's all there has been. So, and those were our biggest theft days. So that has had a huge impact on crime in the mall. And so I can't change how people feel at the mall. And let's face it, it's not 1970. We don't leave our doors open. If you leave your keys in your car, they're going to open your car door and they're going to drive off with it. It's not 1970. It's not that way anywhere in the country. And that's just a reality. We can't control and the reality is they're not keeping people behind bars. You've seen me talk about the Safety Act. We're here to talk about something else, but I figured that deserved an answer. But we are doing good. We are going to have blips from time to time, but on the overall, crime is still good. It's going to be really hard to keep it at as low as we are, because 18 is really low, really low for violent crimes. It's going to be really hard to keep it that way. In fact, I think we could, not that we want to do this, but you could almost see it double. We'd still be the lowest violent crime rate in the state for towns over 50,000. So. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, I was hoping you could flesh out that hypothetical a little bit more. When you first got elected and there was a village manager that you guys were obviously at loggerheads, but he was supported by a majority of the people who were elected to our board at the time. If 2 years from now somebody ran against you that did not get along with the rest of the people over politics slate, how does that work out as appointing the village manager if that new mayor and the trustees that were aligned with you, how does that get resolved in your view?
Well, I think it gets resolved a lot better than it did with me, because what would happen is you would interview you would interview candidates, you would sit down and you'd talk with those candidates, and then you would get the mayor has to appoint, but he has to get approval from the board. So you're going to have to find someone that you both agree upon. And so I think if you find someone you both agree upon, maybe one side likes this guy more and one side likes this guy more, but both people say, hey, this is our number 2. Then you end up with that number 2, and then you say, hey, this is the guy that we agree upon, and now you both are committed to that individual, and now you have a much better chance of working together, and that manager has a much better chance of helping your board coalesce. When you hire someone specifically to obstruct your position, at your mayor's position, you're going to have problems. I can guarantee you, no one, as a mayor, and I know a lot of mayors, probably more than most, if not anyone in the room, no mayor is going to run for mayor and then be told, go sit in the corner. The people just elected you, but it doesn't matter because there's 6 of us and we hired a village manager, so go sit in the corner. It's not going to happen because no one runs for mayor that has that mentality that they're going to be shoved off in a corner. They just ran for election and the people, I think as someone who votes, I vote for my mayor to lead the town, not to be told he doesn't matter, not to be told his positions don't matter. And so I want someone, if I'm in that position where I have a board and a mayor that are split, I specifically want a manager they've both agreed upon because that's what's going to help the board function together. So.
Mayor Pekau, can you talk a little bit about the interim village manager that you had on after the departure of the previous one and his background?
Yeah, so we hired an interim village manager. And and I guess I'll go a little bit further into saying why I hired this interim village manager. So one of the things I had noticed as mayor, obviously people realized it was made a full-time position, so I was around a lot, and I was able to, and I did know some people because I used to be a contractor for the village. I did know some people in some positions in the village. I've also been in the village for a long time, so I knew some others. Some I didn't, that were department heads. And I can tell you, with the village manager that we had, the department heads walked on eggshells because, think about this. If you're a department head and you know the village manager and the mayor are at odds, okay? And the mayor is asking for information, which he's entitled to the information, but the village manager is saying don't give him that information, but the village manager can fire you on the spot. The mayor has no control over that. You've really put department heads in a really crappy position if you do something like that. Okay, and I can tell you they were in a crappy position, and their morale was low. It was a very uncomfortable place to be. It was a toxic work environment. People being called into offices and being reamed for talking to me. It was a really uncomfortable environment. I can't even explain it to people how difficult the environment was. We hired that interim village manager. We hired Tom Dubelby. He used to be a trustee. He was actually a big supporter of Dan McLaughlin in my first election where I defeated him. He was a big supporter of Dan McLaughlin. He also ran our veterans program. He also was an executive with AT&T. So he's been around the block for a long time. A lot of people that I knew said, you have to get rid of him. First thing you get in there, you have to get rid of him. Obviously, I don't have that power, but it's like you have to get rid of him, you have to get rid of him, you have to get rid of him. I'm like, how about I figure out who he is first before I worry, just because he took another side in an election and he didn't know me. And he did a great job running our veterans program, and we got along great because he's an Orland Park person. He cares about Orland Park. I care about Orland Park, so he was fantastic. And what I felt we needed after that time, I knew we had department heads that could run their departments, but what we needed morale to improve. We needed people to want to come to work. We needed people to stop walking on eggshells. And we needed, over the interim period, to have someone who could identify any things we didn't know about. Any projects that were going on, or any things that were in the closet that were hidden that we didn't know, any problems we had to address. And I knew there were some, but I didn't know what they all were. I said, identify as many of those as you can. Your job's not to fix them, but I don't want the new village manager to be blindsided by these problems. I want him to know what these problems are. I want to at least have them identified. And quite frankly, Tom did a fantastic job at that. He did an outstanding job of just getting our department heads to feel more comfortable at work, and also finding a lot of things that he found out about, including that investigation, which was hidden and buried. That was his first day on the job. It got dropped on him by an assistant finance director. So there's a lot of things that he did, and he did a really good job at doing it. And I know he's taken a lot of personal heat from people because he used to support the previous mayor. And at the end of the day, he was here for Orland Park, and that's what he was doing. And so that's the way I kind of view things. It's kind of how I viewed things with all of our department heads that we had before. And because we had an early retirement and COVID, everyone took it. So we lost all of our department heads. So they're all new, all of them, in the last 2 years. I think that we've done a fantastic job.
Hi there. I just wanted to circle back to the comments about safety. We have to remember that the police are reactive. But companies need to be proactive and protect their employees' also safety. So if I'm working in a hospital, we have security in the building, and then we call the police to assist. Brinks was supposed to have 3 armed guards in the vehicle, but if you read the article, they had 1 single armed guard. They are not protecting their employees. Therefore, when the police are alerted, they are coming to, forgive me, a shit show that Brinks creates or a company creates. So we have to have a reactive police, presence, but we have to have companies that honor their employees and protect them too. I feel safe when I walk into the hospital, but that man probably didn't feel safe riding alone. So we have a police presence that comes to us and has to react on the spot. And obviously, they caught the culprit at the end of the day, so that's a success. I just want to remind everybody that everybody is doing the very best they can. And we can't blame people for not taking it on the spot because he was alone. So
I don't think anyone was placing blame on that, for one. And I think that of course companies have responsibilities, but we are, I would say we are not just reactive. We are very proactive. And one of the reasons crime is where it is, there's probably 2 big reasons. One is we clear cases like nobody's business. So criminals know that. They don't want to get caught, okay? And so that's one. The second thing is that we are very proactive. We change our strategies. We change how we adapt to what we're seeing out there so that we can have a presence that deters or hardens targets that need to be so there's less crime. A very good example is the youth supervision program. The mall, Chief McCarthy asked me about that right when I got there. We had no relationship with the mall, and that was one of the things I tried to do is establish a relationship. I started to establish a really good one, and so we had this conversation. For a year and a half, they resisted doing it. We finally convinced them to do it, and then it worked great. We said, hey, try it for 3 months. We'll support you. We'll make sure there's part-time police to support you. Let's get this done. And it has made a huge difference over at the mall. It's made a huge difference for all of those stores at the mall. And they're getting their leases re-upped. They're getting other companies want to come there. They're fully leased. They have had really good success with their tenants as well. So everybody is very, very happy with that program. And again, that's a proactive program. Another proactive program was a mobile response unit, which addresses mental health issues. We were able to get a grant, and then we were able to find more money to continue the program. So we've had it now for, I think, 4 years. And what that is it's 3 full-time psychiatrists or psychologists that are available all the time. So anytime we have an event, and a lot of our events involve mental health, anytime when it's a nonviolent mental health event, we can call those people out and they will handle that call. They will take over the call completely so that our officers can get back on the street. What people don't know is the only people that can involuntarily commit someone is a police officer. That takes them off the street for like 5 hours. It's reduced our involuntary committals by 35%. And that's a benefit for having police on the street, but the other thing it's a benefit for is these people that are in crisis, they're having the worst day of their life, and they're getting the support that they need as opposed to being putting in the criminal justice system. So less burden on the criminal justice system. So all that stuff is good. So I know, again, it's not the topic we're here for tonight, but it's an important topic, so I wanted to mention that. But we are very proactive. That's one of the reasons why we do a good job. But you're right, we can't be everywhere. No one has enough officers to cover 22 square miles, and anything can happen. So the best thing you can do is to be vigilant, pay attention, know what your surroundings are. Our police talk about this all the time, have situational awareness, lock your car, keep your keys with you, right? Lock your doors at in your house. Those are the most important things you can do. And if you see something, call us and say something, and we'll be out there.
Hi there. I wouldn't blame you for just throwing your arms up in response to this question, but I'll give it a shot anyway. Why are there City of Chicago residents and City of Chicago employees going door to door throughout Orland promoting that the residents of Orland vote yes instead of no?
Well, so I think, from my perspective, every race we've had the city of Chicago here trying to do stuff. So that's a really good point, is why does the city of Chicago care so much? So one of the things the village manager also has the power to do is they have the power. So as a board, and I'm going to let Clerk O'Sullivan talk about this, as a board, we don't negotiate the union contracts. We approve them. So we don't negotiate them. But a village manager, because they have this hiring authority, they can actually give things away or do things operationally that create a past precedent that we now have to negotiate against. And that's problematic. That can be a big problem, and it has been a problem. And I think Clerk O'Sullivan saw it when he first got on the board.
Yeah, it's funny. I just came from a negotiation meeting at 5 o'clock today for the support staff for District 230. And didn't know this was going to come up, but we talked about the makeup of our negotiating team for the management side, for the school district side. So it's the assistant superintendent of business, human resources, and then 3 board members. And the reason there are 3 board members on there because they bring the community perspective to that. So our attorney, I think he was an Itasca or something like that. He's not from the community. He's really good negotiator, really good, love him as team. Our business manager, I think, is Homer, and then our HR person is somewhere out in Manuka, I think. So we bring the Payless Orland, perspective to our negotiations. So we know every step of the way what the benefit package is, what the working conditions are, what the management rights are, and what the salaries are. Not the retirement, for the most part, that's done by the state. But it's how can you negotiate and not have a community presence in the room when you go to represent the community. It goes exactly what I said before about having all the responsibility and none of the authority. That's not a place to be. So it's funny you mentioned negotiations. I just came from one, and we talked about how important it was to have community members on there. I can't believe that there's nobody at the village negotiating on our behalf that doesn't live or an elected official in Orland Park. Doesn't make any sense to me.
Yes, hi. Can you talk a little bit about the misinformation that's going out there from your opposition party in reference to taking over the fire district, as well as wanting to raise your salary back to the $150,000, which I know isn't true. But can you speak a little bit about that, please?
I can. So I've heard this rumor about the fire district. First off, the fire district is a separately created district by the taxpayers. The village, the mayor has no say-so in the fire district, so no interest in the fire district. And anyone who knows anything about municipalities wants no part of having a fire department inside their village. It's just the fire district does its own thing. That's great. They're a separate taxing body. They answer to you separately. Have no interest whatsoever. Regarding my salary, yeah, I've seen all of that stuff. It's nuts. Let's think about this. So I've seen the whole, oh, he did this, and he did this, and he did this, and he did this, so he can get to 150. Okay, when I ran the first time, and I know that we have people in the room that attacked me for taking the 150, saying that I said I wouldn't. I also know a lot of you were in the room, and you heard this question asked dozens of times during my first run, and I said, hey, they've raised the salary. That's the law. That's the salary for the next 4 years. They've made the position full-time. My job is to earn it. But for the next term, I will lower it back to $40,000 and return it back to a part-time position. But as long as it's been made a part-time position and this is a salary, I will earn the salary. And interestingly, when I talk to people across at the doors, they're like, hey, a mayor can earn that salary. I don't disagree, but you're there all the time, right? And so we brought it back to $40,000. We got rid of pensions for elected officials. I'm not a part of the pension system. I could have been in the first year first 4 years because I was full-time. I did not enter the pension system, and you can FOIA that, and you will see I was not part of the pension system. We eliminated pensions for all elected officials, so none of us are eligible anymore for pensions. And I've term limited myself. So it's a really convoluted way to get back to 150 to not take it. It wouldn't have been a hell of a lot easier, frankly, to just say, well, I was wrong. This is really a full-time position, and it warrants this pay. Right? Wouldn't that have been an easier thing for me to do rather than this convoluted craziness? Yeah, I have no interest. And the other thing is, my favorite misinformation thing is that I can just raise it. Not true. The board can raise my salary under this form of government. Guess what? They did it. They did it 6 years ago or 6.5 years ago. They raised the salary under the current form of government. The board can raise it under the new form of government. It doesn't change. It takes a board vote. It has to be done 6 months before the next election. This board has no interest. They're not going to do it. I'm not interested. So I can't control what a board does in the future, but not going to happen under my watch. And again, it's no different regardless of the form. The form of government has no bearing on the ability of a board to do that.
Very simple question. It seems that unions in general want to keep this form of government, and they're aligned with the vote yes crowd. Can you expound on that?
Well, I think what I said earlier that you saw is that a village manager can give things away outside of the contract. And anyone who knows anything about negotiating with unions or union contracts is once you start giving something away, it's a past precedent. So it actually de facto becomes part of the previous contract practically. And so you're now negotiating against something that somebody gave away that the board doesn't even know. And that has definitely happened in the first 2 years. And I'm seeing nods from the trustees. They know it happened because we dealt with it. We're like, where did this come from? So those are the types. So that there's a reason why. The same thing could be said for the ICMA. What's their reason? Well, their reason is because village managers all basically come from the same place. Here in Illinois, they almost all come from NIU. Okay? Guess what? It's like Harvard. It's like anywhere else. This is where all the public administrators come from. That's who they know. They hire their friends. And when we talk about, one of the things you talk about is patronage. It's a lot easier for one village manager that has absolute authority to hire patronage people than it is for a board. Even someone who might want to have patronage hires. If you're a mayor, you have to get approval from your board in a public setting. Okay? In fact, under this form of government, even a mayor, if the mayor and manager are like this, under this form of government, all hires, none of them are required to be publicly approved. So let's say the mayor has his deputy as the village manager, hypothetically, they can hire all kinds of people that they want to hire. You'll never know because none of it's ever public. If you vote no, every single department head and every single assistant director, so every director, every assistant director will be voted on in public that's hired. And they are not hired for a term either, I've seen that. They're hired as at-will employees. So the next mayor could keep them, they could get rid of them. I think a smart mayor is going to keep most of them because the village runs well, right? Just like I didn't come in even if I had the authority, I wouldn't have been coming in to get rid of everybody. That makes no sense. Anyone who has any idea of how to enter an organization of as big as Orland Park, 300 employees and 600 part-time employees, that's not what you would do. You're going to come in there and evaluate the talent that you have.
I have 2 questions. My first one is based on my research and based on what you've said tonight. It seems like you had a disagreement with the old village manager. I'm not sure if there was other disagreements during the last 30 or 40 years in this form of government, and so it seems a little irregular that we would now just turn this into a new form of government because of your interaction with that village manager. But my question is, if this was such a big an issue, why wait 6 years into your mayor campaign to put it on as a referendum in a off-season ballot where it's historically lower voter turnout?
So again, I answered the second question already. I answered it earlier. The same question was asked. The first question, as I pointed out, it's not just it's not one disagreement. It's you hired someone that you put in place specifically to make the mayor's position irrelevant. That's what they tried to do. I don't think that's appropriate for anyone to do to a future mayor, and I don't think it's appropriate for a board to hire a mayor or a manager for longer than the mayor's term. And a good example, and I'm going to bring in the school board, it's not District 230, but District 135. The last election, before the new board was sworn in after they were elected, they signed a 5-year contract with the union. So the new board members that were 4 people elected by the village will never vote on a contract unless they're reelected. I don't think that's right. I think we elect people to have an input into these types of things. And a mayor and a manager, as I said before, have to work closely together. And I think if you want that, I think the village should want that. I think every trustee should want that. I think every resident should want that because that's the way the village is going to operate the best. How is that going to happen? It's going to happen when the mayor and the board agree on your manager.
To that same question, why did you choose this go around instead of the first?
I already answered that question. I answered that question about 45 minutes ago. Well, I know, but we started here at 7 o'clock. I've already answered that question once, so I'm not.
I was actually online watching your stream too, and
Okay.
I was a lame duck mayor and could not make the decision. That's what he said. He could not make a decision.
I did not say that. So, okay, time out. This is not a discussion between anyone here. I answered that question. This is online. You can go back and read the entire question. It's all online. It's all on video. It's all there. So I've already answered the question once. This is now the fourth question.
It was one, but it's okay. My second question is kind of in junction with the young man that left. I was in my research, I found the legal letter from KTG. And in there, it previously summarized, it says that you requested a previous summarized features of the standard form of government. And then on that letter, it was dated December 6th, where KTG provided distinction between the two forms of government, the one that we have now and the one that you're proposing. And then on January 16th, it was submitted to the ballot. My question is, why was there no public forum prior to what you say is that village board meeting, just like we're doing today? During that last month and a half when you were reviewing it, why were we not able to review and have the question and answer with you during that time?
So again, as I said earlier, our village board meetings are all public. This was on the agenda. We had a discussion. We all answered that question. And if I'm not mistaken, it's a referendum. So a referendum means the people get to vote. So I can't do anything more. In fact, there's nothing I can do that is more open to the public than giving you a binding referendum that you vote on and you choose. All we did was put the referendum on the ballot. We're giving you a choice. So there's nothing we can do that gives you more choice than that.
Hi, I just had a quick question. You talked about term limits and village managers not going from one mayoral campaign to the next. At what point do you perhaps limit it to a mayor and a half? Because if your first 2 years in office were, you were at odds with the board, and there are certain things like TIF districts and planning and other stuff that goes into play, how do you see those through? Or how do you assist to see those through when you're putting so many term limits and expecting so much turnover?
So at the end of the day, the people voted for term limits 88% to 12. So again, I didn't put in, I put it on the ballot, like I said I would. I voted for it. And so the village manager, again, cannot be appointed for longer than the mayor's term, okay? But the new mayor can keep the current village manager. I think in most towns, what happens is, at a minimum, there's a transition period with that village manager. At a minimum, that's typical of what happens. Doesn't necessarily have to happen, but that's typical of what happens. And so, that's up to whoever the next mayor is. And obviously, I think what you would see is if you see an administration where, I'll just use one that's going on right now. You've got Palos Park has a very contested election, and they've had the same mayor for 16 years. They've had the same village manager for at least 10, I believe, 10 or 12, and he used to be our village manager way back a long time ago. If the current administration is supporting a candidate, then there's another candidate. If the current administration's candidate wins, I'm sure she's going to appoint the same village manager. I would imagine it's not changing. If the other person wins, I'm not sure what that person's going to do, and they may decide, they may talk to, the village manager in Palos Park and say, hey, he's a good guy, and we're going to keep him on board. That's going to be up to them. But I think the mayor, and again, I've transitioned as a mayor, so the only one, in the room, and one of two three, I guess, because we've got someone from Tinley that used to be a mayor that lives here that's transitioned into the mayor's position. It is very important for the mayor and the village manager to work together. Very important. We work together. We work hand in hand. We have to be aligned. It just has to happen, because no one calls Orland Park and says, I want to talk to the village manager. No mayor calls and says, I want to talk to the village manager. They say, I want to talk to the mayor. Who goes and represents us at every event? The mayor does. Even though the village manager here has the legal authority, no one wants to talk to them. And quite frankly, who signs every single plat, every single ordinance? The mayor, because that's still in the statute. So ultimately, the clerk does too. That's right. There's certain things. The clerk signs as well. Yeah. So he signs, but it's the mayor and the clerk that signs those things, right? So I think it's real important that the manager works together. And frankly, most people don't know who their trustees are. They don't really. They don't have an idea. They do know who their mayor is. Most of them don't know who their manager is. They know who their mayor is. That's who's accountable to you. And you want to add anything to that?
No. I've said it twice already here.
Sean, do you have anything to add to that as a trustee? Because you've witnessed,
Well, nobody knows them.
kind of how important it is for managers and the mayor to work together.
I was transitioning, so I lost context a little bit here.
If
Another question, come back.
So managers and mayors working together, how important it is for them to be aligned.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the last thing any board wants is a surprise. And unfortunately, what we've discovered, and even my short tenure, is there's always extra surprises out there. And if you don't have a village manager that's transparent, as we have, that's working with us to uncover, either past mistakes or for us to help better understand. As a trustee, one of the biggest things I think I had to come to terms with, which I understood, is we get a lot of information just before the meetings, right? So 2 weekends, we are spending a lot of time reading and digesting. I've worked to shift that, and we did that by working with the village manager. Give us more information up front, right? Keep feeding us information, not just before. But that was a long-standing practice in Orland Park. Our trustees didn't see things until the Friday before the Monday. Now we are getting a lot more information. So that relationship is absolutely vital. And if in our current form of government, if our village manager decided only the mayor has the statutory authority to see all information, I could put in an inquiry, but the village manager could deny me under our current form. Thankfully, because we are working together, we get that information in a much more timely fashion.
Well, and what I would add to that as a mayor is I talk to the village manager almost every day. Even the village manager I didn't get along with, I talked with him almost every day because it's important. And I will tell you that village managers don't get information that I get. If an elected official wants to call me from the state or whatever and they want input, or the mayor's manager's council, something like that, they're calling me. They're not calling the village manager. They're calling me to engage. I'm the person that Saturday is going to the legislative breakfast to meet with all the legislators. I'm the person that talks to people to try and get the $7 million for roads and things like that. And our staffs have discussions as well, but I'm heavily involved in all of those requests because it matters. When we have bad bills going in front of the state, the mayors have a big voice, and it's something that, good mayors know, and the mayors together make phone calls. They make phone calls to legislators. They do that, and I know we have someone who supported a legislator for a long time, and he's nodding his head. That's it. Congressmen don't care about trustees. They don't care about the village manager. But when the mayor calls, they take the call, right? So it's really important that we have those relationships. It's really important that we work together because the manager is running things day to day. And basically I'm running a lot, doing a lot of other things. If we were doing the same thing, it wouldn't be very productive.
I've got a question about the language of the referendum itself, how it was written. It's only a few sentences long. I've had to read it several times. I've had people try to explain it to me. I think I understand it. Who wrote the referendum? Who's responsible for that? And if you can just explain how that came about.
So who wrote it was Klein, Thorpe, and Jenkins, our attorneys. Who's responsible for it is the state legislature, because it's actually in the statute, and we wrote it verbatim as the question is required to be asked from in the statute. So the statute specifically says to abandon this form of government, this is the way the question needs to be, this is how the question is asked. So that's exactly what we wrote. We did exactly what was in the statute. And there can be no debate. Could they have modified the question? They could, but then people can debate that it doesn't meet the intent of the law. By following it exactly what's written in the law, there's no questions about that.
Hi, I've got just a quick question. I wonder if you know, or if you've looked into what it's going to cost to do this if we change governments. Because it seems to me there's going to be a lot of expenses. You're going to have legal expenses. You're going to have policy changes. You're going to have recruitment for personnel, hiring, retention, stuff like that. Have you looked into that?
There's no change there's no expense. I mean, the only action we have to take is once the election is verified, all we have to do is approve the ordinance that we have, and the village manager's already in place. We already have our directors in place. We already have all that in place. So if we decide, and it's perfunctory, but I'll have to, my understanding from the attorneys is I'll have to appoint all of our directors and their assistant directors. None of them are going anywhere. We're not hiring any new ones. So I'm going to be appointing all them. I've been involved in not all of their hiring. Some of them were hired without us, but I've been involved in many of them, and I'm comfortable with those that are there. And so that's what will happen. So it really does not have any cost to the village whatsoever changing this operation at all. And if anything, there's potentially a cost savings, because when you remove a village manager, because they have all these legal powers under our current form, you pretty much have to give them a massive severance, where you won't have that. If they violate our policies or our directives, we'll have abilities to mitigate some of those costs. Anything else? Great. Well, I want to thank you all for the questions, but I have some frequently asked questions that we've seen that I put together for some people. It's probably, some of them are probably similar to what's on the village website, because they're questions we've been getting. But I just want to answer them because some of them didn't come up tonight. If this one came up, and I'll reiterate it. Does a no vote mean that we become a mayor-council form of government? No. A no vote means we become a village trustee form of government. So I know some people have been saying that. A lot of people have been saying that. Absolutely not true. If this referendum passes, does this mean the mayor will become the new village manager? No. I can't become the new village manager. Illinois conflict of interest laws, I cannot be the village manager and the mayor. So no, that cannot happen. We talked about the salary increase as well. That's not true. And I am always the liquor commissioner, so that's the question as well. It's come up. I'm the liquor commissioner, either form of government, doesn't matter. I'm the liquor commissioner now. And I paid a $3,000 stipend for that. You already asked the question on why it's stated that way on the ballot. We've already discussed the fact that we will have a village manager if the no vote prevails. What type of towns do nearby governments operate under? So that's come up, and I mentioned this a little bit. Oak Lawn is the only one that has our same form of government. And Oak Lawn had a village manager for about 20 years. He's the one that got the DUI and cost them about $10 million. And then they just hired one of their trustees to be village manager. They have the same form of government that we have. Okay, so it can happen regardless of, at the end of the day, it can happen regardless of what form of government you are. The councils can do lots of things. To operate like us, Tinley Park, Mokina, Frankfort, Lamont, Homer Glen, New Lenox, Oak Forest, to name a few. So I already talked about what would change operationally as far as the new form of government. And then here's the other thing. If you do have any questions about the referendum, you can get more details on the village website under election information. There's a page on referendum. There's a video that our village manager and our attorney put together because of these frequently asked questions that they were getting and staff was getting. And again, they have to be apolitical. The village can only give information that's factual, and they have to be apolitical, and they both are. That's why they did it, because they're not involved in the election in any way. And so they answered those questions to the best of their ability. And then also, there's also a whole sheet there as well about what the facts are of this referendum. So I would encourage you to go to that site and inform yourself. I've always felt like if people understand it, they will feel like all of the board members, every single trustee, and the clerk, and me, and they'll vote no. But it's your decision to make. That's why we put it on the ballot for you to make it. So thank you very much for coming tonight. I really appreciate it.